What you need to be doing is stopping people illegally entering the country who have no fucking idea who they are.
What did Mark Hughes do to you?
The last person you want to see is me. And if I get an opportunity to fucking make it 1-1, I will. I'm fighting with Roy after the game, like, or any time I see Roy on site, we're fighting. David Beckham, who's an iconic sports figure in this country, deep-throating the royal family for a knighthood. Well, do you know when the flame's there and it's fucking burning your kids, who do you want coming in to save you? The fella who's ticked the box or the woman who's ticked the box because of skin pigmentation or sexual orientation, or the fucking best candidate for the job? In the bar, drunk, I was actually slapped an Everton fan and I didn't know he was 15. This cunt had overstepped his boundaries, booted me in the shin and ends up getting open palm slapped. And his dad's standing right there, picked up a pint glass, and as I'm coming back for him, Tim Flowers rugby tackles me. A mate of mine, Peter Kay, says to me, Joe, if you keep going to barbers, eventually get a haircut. If you keep hanging around with fucking dickheads who carry knives, eventually someone's going to get stabbed. I know my brother didn't kill Andy Walker. All the women who were attacking me, I was like, why are you silent when there's two fellas here boxing in the Women's Olympics, punching women's heads in? You've got cunts like you fucking driving around with a camera on your head, getting them fucking 3 and 6 points on the licence, or fucking trying to crash into them. If you go to a knife fight, make sure you bring a fucking bazooka.
Did you kick your missus in the head? I want to say a quick thank you to our sponsors, Gold Seal. I use their products every single day, and now I finally get to work with them. I use their products for anti-inflammatory, reduced anxiety, better sleep, and mental clarity. I'm going to put a link to their website in the description, along with a 10% discount code for you to take advantage of. Go and have a look at their website, see if there's anything in there for you. I hope you enjoy this week's episode, and good health.
The brother never came back into the family fold.
I've just realised we are officially rolling. So, Joey, thank you for...
Good, mate. I thought we were rolling anyway.
Thank you for coming
anyway.
on. Yeah, we're straight in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you don't really need an introduction. People, the world knows who you are. Probably the most controversial Premier League player the country's possibly ever seen. You're up there. But let's go back. Let's get a feel for who Joey Barton is. So, you was born and raised, was it St John's Council Estate?
I was born... in, obviously, Wiston Hospital in Liverpool, and I think we moved to the Bluebell Estate, which is famous for where Steven Gerrard was brought up, and we were in high-rise flats there on Wingate Towers, I think, while I was a baby. And then, obviously, we got a council house on St John's Estate, which is across Highton Village on the other side of the town, and it kind of edges right up to the industrial estate, kind of the backstop of the M62, M57.
Describe the St John's Estate for me, because I've done a bit of research. It seems like it's rough, ready.
Yeah, I think it's like any inner city council estate, you know, in terms of, you know, you have to have your wits about you. It is the concrete jungle. It's mellowed. I think it's mellowed a bit, certainly because they removed, I think, every high-rise or every block of flats. So obviously, post-Thatcher, Liverpool, it was certainly not the most desirable place to live, shall we say. It wasn't filled with job prospects. And, you know, people have to make their way through. And I would imagine there's lots of towns in the north and maybe not so much in the south, but certainly lots of towns across the country that will have felt the impact. So growing up in the 80s was strange. Obviously, you know, you grow up off the back of not trusting the police, not trusting the media at a very young age because of, you know, lots of things you see happen, but also, you know, the Hillsborough tragedy, where people that you knew or people are, you know, it's a very incestuous place, Liverpool. It's a city, but in many ways it's a goldfish bowl. And obviously, you know, to see the smear campaign of the people, you know, makes you very, very distrusting of the authorities.
Yeah, what did happen there? What was the Hillsborough scandal? I mean, I remember the tragedy itself. I remember it vividly. It's one of my most vivid childhood memories. I was absolutely shocked because I used to go regularly to Highbury and watch football at the time the Hillsborough disaster took place. But what was the scandal surrounding that?
Well, like anything, isn't it? If you look at like the Chernobyl disaster or whatever, there's always, you know, you go in and there's an inquiry, and it tends to be, as it was there, you know, obviously human error. You know, where that human error lies, you know, that's been the family's fight for justice since. You know, some people's argument is that any human error, you know, are the police responsible? Was the, you know, the match day commander, David Duckenfield, you know, capable of or competent enough to deliver safe, you know, protocols for the people who paid for the ticket. You know, there's a lot more people qualified than me to answer that, and you know, I think the problem was obviously, you know, people losing loved ones, which is bad enough, you know, but then obviously the smear campaign that took place afterwards, you know, the looting of the corpses, the mainstream media kind of spun the line, which I think was taken by the establishment. Who that is, we're yet to figure out. But and that was, that people had urinated on, dead supporters and picked the pockets of dead supporters, whilst they were dying of their injuries from the terrace. Obviously the crush on the terraces on certain parts of the stadium, the ramparts and the pitch. And then obviously that was then the narrative that a lot of people believed, for a long, long period of time, because people believe, state propaganda.
What they read. I remember reading, I can't remember how long ago it was, it would have been a very long time, that people that were dying were having their jewellery stolen from their fingers.
Yeah, again.
Who spreads that kind of shit? Because we now know, looking back, and we now know the media like we do, we just know that the chances are that never happened.
Yeah, I mean, you have to speak to eyewitnesses. It's uncorroborated, and I think what the inquiry into Hillsborough found was, obviously police officers' statements being doctored. People being shown statements in courtrooms afterwards and saying, "I never said that or wrote that." So it uncovered what I think most people know. Look, I don't think I'm exposing any great scandal. I think it's well documented, and the families have fought courageously for justice, as you would for any loved one, and they must be commended on that. And yet, there'll still be an argument to whether they've actually, fully received a full apology from the state for those smears. And you can imagine, as I say, it's bad enough for Liverpool fans to, be involved in a crush that kills your own fans. But then when they're saying the other supporters were actually, urinating on corpses and stealing from corpses, I mean, that is a level of...
That's a wild story.
Yeah, it's a level of depravity I think is disgusting. And again, you look across the miners at 𝐬𝐵 or whatever, this is a tried and tested method from the state.
Yeah, very insensitive. Well, may they all rest in peace. Sadly, they shouldn't have had to. But young Joey Barton got into football. Was you fiery when you were younger? Was you a fighting man?
Yeah, I've obviously asked like my grandmother and stuff, and people like my mum and my dad, and like, what was it like as a baby? As you have kids and you move into that kind of phase of your life, you obviously see a lot of yourself and your partner and your kids, don't you? Little glimpses of, little flashes of Eva, and then you start questioning, your parents and grandparents. Say, what was I like when I was like that age? And the one thing that resoundingly comes back is that I was really, really headstrong. So I've kind of always, as long as I can remember, I've taken on authority, fight or flight. I've kind of always had fight. So, for me, it's naturally going into football. I didn't think football when I was, born 82. First World Cup is kind of Italia 90, where I fall madly in love with football. But I was obviously loving it and playing it before. And then the Premier League comes alive in 92. So obviously, you saying you just stopped watching kind of 89,
After
90
Italia 90, that's when I dropped off football. And I was fanatical.
Yeah.
And then it just didn't interest me no more.
So then it kind of changed. Football as we know it changed there. And, I think it was a huge shift in society as well. Certainly for me, you're 8 at Italia 19, kind of Sarajevo, Iraq, first Iraq. It's kind of, so, I know you're watching football, but in the rise of football, you've obviously had lots of stuff that's happened geopolitically that affects you. And obviously being from Liverpool, kind of seeing those things in the late 90s of, the smear campaign of the mainstream media and, the propaganda arm of the mainstream media, which is the BBC and so on and so forth. You kind of grow, and the police's responsibility, you have a strong trigger for justice and injustice. I think that's most good people. They understand that there's a kind of, sometimes there's an eye for an eye situation, but I think most are fair. I think most people's injustice in modern society is because of the unfairness that they see going on around them every day. So again, I was probably in a fortunate position of we were kind of always untrusting. So when COVID came along, we were like, yeah, we're kind of 15, 20 years into not trusting a word these fuckers say. And obviously in the midst of that, you want to fit in. And, for me, as I say, I had a choice at a young age to definitely, challenge the authorities and the Crown if I wanted to. That that was an option open to me at a young age to not do things by the rule book. But obviously you decide to follow a different path and, you know, do well in the sport and obviously earn a few quid, and obviously 50% of that or whatever, all my earnings ever have been paid back to the state in some kind of tax or national insurance. And yet, you know, with all its power today, as we sit here as a 42-year-old who made it out of the council estate in Liverpool with, you know, slim prospects, all the state want to do at this moment in time is put me in my place and persecute me and prosecute me. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
You think you were living in North Korea?
Yeah, we'll come on to all your political obstacles and the media attacking you, which I think it's irrefutable that the media have got it in for you.
Well, see, as a badge of honour, you know.
Well, yeah, you've stood the line, haven't you? You've held your own and you've not buckled.
You're inspired by other people that you've seen do that. So you can kill a man, can't you? Do you know what I mean? It's like we talk about your pal. Kill a man, but you can't kill his idea. You know, it's even more dangerous to kill a man, you know, because you martyr the idea. And as I always say to everybody, I see people attack all, you know, and I always say, you're not attacking the message, you're attacking the messenger. So, you know, we need to get serious, I think, in our country and in our communities about, you know, what is the message we're going to stand for. You know, if you pay tax in this country, you know, you expect a level of security for your children, for your family members that currently is not either available to everybody, which is like, well, what are we paying for? You know, you'd expect a level of behaviour of the other people in the community to be, you know, at a certain level. Otherwise, we're in the realms of barbarians. You know, we are hierarchical chimpanzees. And, you know, if you go in any, you know, chimpanzee enclosure and you put a lot of kind of male, you know, dominant age chimpanzees in, it's going to shake the fabric of the ecosystem.
Are you talking about illegal migrants being plonked into hotels, flooding communities overnight? Is that what you're...
Yeah, look, I think that's
referring
one
to?
factor for sure. That's one factor. I mean, you know, another factor is obviously, you know, some of the kind of clannish, cultish, man in the sky battles that are taking place on our streets that are leading to a lack of security for the native people, for you know, for your family to not feel safe going to a Taylor Swift dance themed event
and not coming home.
Well, not just not coming home, being stabbed 122 times in the head, or 84 times in the head, or 36 times in the head, or even just 10 or 13 times, like some of the very, very fortunate people to survive that, you know, that attack had to withstand, which obviously, as you know, you're a man of the world. You know, one knife wound is catastrophic, life-changing injuries. Never mind 10 to 13 as a 6, 7.
It's the most upsetting event I can remember happening in my lifetime. It really impacted me in quite a not profound, but just a devastating way. I was really sad watching that unfold, and I can only imagine what the parents and the family would feel if it affected me, a complete stranger, the way it did. I cried my eyes out on a balcony reading it.
Yeah, I think you're joining. Let's say we're at, 68, 70 million people in the country today. I think you're probably probably 99% of that would feel exactly the same way. I had to stop reading some of the transcripts, and bear in mind, they're transcripts. That's not actual evidence where, you know, you've been in a courtroom, or certainly a Crown Court setting. You can imagine for some of those people to see that, what had happened to, you know, I've got a 9-year-old daughter, 6-year-old son. You know, to think what those families have had to endure. And then, you know, the aftermath of that, you know, people coming to lay flowers with insincerity and, you know, using it as kind of political point scoring because allegedly he went back down south and went to attended the party. So that shows you the kind of level of person you're dealing with, aren't you? Somebody who's able to, you know, compartmentalise emotion and feeling to say whatever's necessary or do whatever's necessary to move the chains of whatever agenda he's pushing. For me, you know, a dangerous person, really dangerous person. And disingenuous.
Disingenuous, possibly psychotic. He's definitely a sociopath, but... Maybe
a homosexual.
Well, I think that is the rumour.
I wouldn't... It'd actually make me like him a bit more, I think. Just to know that somebody's in bumming him, and he'd get to feel what a lot of people in this country have felt who voted for him.
I don't think I could ever warm to him at all. I think he's a disgusting human being, a shocking leader, and I think he hates us.
But is there any good in him?
I can't see it.
I always try and see the good in people. I know it's really, really difficult at times, and for some people, it's not possible.
Well, it's a healthy way to think.
Well, it's just a way to think, because it's easy to put people in a box. And, I've met a lot of people who've done heinous things, inexcusable things. And context and, upbringing and everything it has to be a factor. The big questions I worry about the monster in Southport is, how did that happen? How has the family missed that? What has been getting said in the household to formulate that mindset? Was he psychotic? If he was psychotic, clearly, why hasn't he been fucking sectioned?
Did you see what happened outside the Turkish embassy yesterday? There was a guy burning a Quran, and then someone's come running out with a blade that long, and he's trying to kill the bloke in broad daylight. If let's say you was there, Joey Barton, and you witnessed a guy running out of an embassy with a 6-7 inch knife trying to stab somebody for burning scripture of their ideology. What do you think you would do in that scenario as an onlooker? Because people were just recording it, driving by, walking by, and there's someone just about to get murdered in front of their very eyes.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem with the kind of position that most mindsets have got to in the West, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? So I'll answer that in two parts. First one being, I think it's really stupid. If someone's burning the Bible or the Torah or the Quran, whether you believe in it or not,
let it go.
Or the Book of Mormon, or there's been a stage show in the West End that's been fantastic called the Book of Mormon for years. It's brilliant. You haven't seen any Mormon suicide bombing the place, have you? In protest of David E. Smith and the golden plates, even as ridiculous as it might sound.
Hilarious.
But again, this is the problem with free speech, and we get into this of what are we allowed to say and what are we allowed to question. Anyway, I do think it's really, really stupid to ban religious books. Anybody's, certainly after Charlie Hebdo, and you obviously know if you do anything against the Islamic kind of religion, there's going to be a consequence for that. And I would say, I think that if you do anything against the Jewish religion, with Mossad and the Israeli state apparatus, obviously you've got to be careful what you do there. And I would imagine, let's use logic and common sense here. I would imagine that applies to every other one. So if you say anything about the king and about our government, I would imagine, like the KGB or the CIA or the FBI, are we just immune to it? Have we not got MI5? Does it not exist here? People are really, really naive. So we have to accept that it kind of goes on, and you have to accept that there's a kind of overarching security bubble. So I would imagine most people won't want to hear this, but if you've watched the Edward Snowden documentaries, the great Oliver Stone made it. It goes through what was kind of, the cameras. Remember, all the cameras were looking back at you, and what do you think they've got now? I always watch The Dark Knight as a Batman, Christian Bale. I know you said before I look like Christian Bale. Michael Caine's the butler for him. I'm not a big superhero, but he's got the screen, and he basically shows him how to, he basically can hear everything that everybody's talking about everywhere, and he says you've got to blow this up or whatever after, because it's such a. Well, that's what's coming. If they haven't already got it, that's what's coming with AI, or how online we all are. So you just have to presume that
we're being watched.
There's people, and also if you're not doing anything wrong, but there's also a weirdness about it. As Snowden points out in that kind of documentary, there's what is privacy?
There's voyeurism, and then there's taking the piss.
Well, again, we're probably the most surveilled we've ever been at any point ever. Yeah,
it's a weird feeling, because I always feel like I'm being watched.
But you don't feel safe though, do you?
No.
So isn't that the most? It's kind of inverse logic that there's, with the most surveilled, there's most CCTV cameras everywhere, and yet it's the least safe you've probably felt in your lifetime.
It goes back to what you said, and it was an interesting point that you made, and I've never heard anybody make it, but I totally get it and agree. You said, we're paying our taxes to feel at least like we're protected in our own country. Otherwise, what are we paying our taxes for?
Yeah.
And I feel the most vulnerable I've ever felt, and I'm a pretty secure guy, and I've got no problem standing my ground either. But like you said, we're paying all this money into the system for the system to protect us, but yet I feel kind of helpless at the moment.
Yeah, and you got to remember that's where the money comes from. You're seeing Doge kind of Musk take on. It looks like the CIA's. USAID, the Democrat.
He's not fucking around, is
he?
He
ain't messing around. Now, that's, obviously, they speak a similar language to us in terms of they use, a lot of our dialect. But they're a completely different species, the Americans, do you know what I mean? Let's be honest, they think completely different to us. And they're all also most of them are armed to the teeth. Which would, I suppose, if you think about it, I would feel a bit safer if I was, because at this moment in the UK, the people who follow the rules aren't armed. And the people who don't follow the rules are armed to the fucking teeth. Most police officers are wasting time policing stuff that actually isn't, in many regards, crimes, these non-hate crimes. And
ridiculous.
It's crazy. So you're paying all your taxes, right? You've got loads of police there everywhere. They're always, you go any footy match, look at the police. Go and see any demonstration, look at the police presence. You've got all these CCTV cameras, right? Well, no, people don't feel safer. So something's not working, is it? I always laugh at the absurdity of it when they say, oh yeah, we've done this, and the police are catching, we've raided this house and got, a load of Charlie in here, or we've load of hashish here, or a load of ecstasy here, and all that. I'm like, they're not really what you want to be getting, leave that. What you need to be doing is stopping people illegally entering the country who have no fucking idea who they are. Coming from a place where you can pretty much just make your name up to get yourself a birth certificate, and, you can reinvent yourself relatively quickly, especially kind of war-torn areas that might, just at the back of their minds, begrudge what kind of people in the West have done to their homeland, or people who have a similar religion to them. And obviously, if that religion then teaches that, one set of people shouldn't really be on the planet, then all of a sudden we have a really, really dangerous combination. The great Christopher Hitchens said about in Western society, the barbarians never ransack a city. They never take a city. The liberals and the moderates always open the fucking gates for them.
Is that purposeful, do you think?
You look at like Karl Marx and these kind of, this neo-Labour, this neo-Marxist fucking new Labour, I call them. I used to get on with Alistair Cameron, I still do, and I'd love to get him on my podcast and have it, but, maybe one day he will or he won't. He was obviously Tony Blair's propaganda minister. I always call him Goebbels online, do you know what I mean? Just because he's forever calling Musk and Trump Nazis, and they were so wrong on the podcast, him and Rory Stewart. And then it transpires why. Well, Rory Stewart's wife's involved in a company. You can tell Rory's from the council estates, can't you? Rory the Tory. The company was called like Turquoise Green or something like that, and it was obviously USAID funded NGO, to kind of do work in places where they could obviously get £1 million worth of funding. And he was on Bulletin yesterday about how Musk and that have come in, shut it down with Doge, and that contracts have been not adhered to, and he was he was screaming like a banshee, him and Alistair on the podcast, because New Labour brought us this movement of feeling good and optimism. And you remember Oasis, and there was a feel good factor. This was a way that a socialist movement could still work within a kind of capitalist, conservative country. And then they obviously took us into the second Iraq war. I don't really think they had a choice, if I'm honest, because I don't see how we couldn't go after 9/11. I don't see how we couldn't be in a coalition with, George Bush and obviously the neocons in the States. So from kind of that moment on, a massive history fan, and obviously was always looking back, love history in school, and obviously I played football, but I've always had this intrigue in kind of what's happening in the world. As I say, you kind of lived through Hillsborough when I was, I'm probably 6 and 7, and I can vividly remember that. I remember living through, the state. So in most people's lives, it's a lot longer before they realise that the state is fucking at it. For some people in the north, obviously, I think with the miners' situation, and obviously some of the stuff that happened in Liverpool with kind of toxic riots, and then Hillsborough, that permission to pump propaganda at us stopped a bit earlier, I think, than other parts of the country.
With all that madness going on with your upbringing from a council estate, and also your dad's side were hard-working fighting men, but your mum's side of the family were all heavy-duty gangsters, weren't they?
I wouldn't say gangsters, more thieves.
But there was some serious violence that
they were
side of the family.
They were armed robbers. A lot of them got
Any,
armed robbery
was there
convictions.
murders involved?
Yeah, there's a few. There's a few been murdered or attempted murders, and a few murders. Yeah.
Is that your uncle's committing murder or being murdered?
I had an uncle murdered when I was 6. I had an uncle attempted murdered when I was about 14, 13. And I had a cousin and another cousin who committed murder. I think one was manslaughter, one was murder. But then I seen, lots of people I grew up with either kill or be killed. And then, there's other people who disappeared, and a whole host of theories around that. But yeah, look, it's not a nice part of the country, but I think we have to be realistic. Like, crime is rampant in these under-deprived areas. It is what it is.
So being subject to that level of violence, I mean, when there's murders here, there and everywhere, I mean, that's an extreme thing to be exposed to. So
it's not when you're a kid, though. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's
take
normal.
Yes.
So it's like, I suppose, if you grow up in Ireland, in and around the Troubles, it's kind of like, oh yeah, we just have soldiers on the street.
So the question is, how come you didn't slide into that way of life? Instead, you went down the football
Because I
route?
was good at football. That's the reality.
Could you have quite easily gone down the other route?
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, well, it isn't difficult, is it? Do you know what I mean? Especially if you're, if you're loyal and you game, from a relatively young age. I was kind of obsessed with football, and I didn't really want to do anything other than that. And then I was always thinking about going in the military. Thankfully, I never, but I was always thinking about going in the military. Because I didn't really want. I know it came with kind of fast life, but because of my grandmother, the worst thing ever was to disappoint her. So if I'd have, done something bad to somebody and that had ended up at my grandma's door, like no financial, no fucking, no deal or whatever they were up to, the kids, no car, no, it wasn't worth it. For me, the most important thing was to make my grandmother kind of proud of me, and I think she, even to this day, even with my trials and tribulations, I think she knows what I stand for and is.
Do you think you'd have been able to have dealt with the discipline that the military instilled?
Do you know, it's a great question, mate, really is. I've got obviously lots of pals now who've served in all different, you just meet people across your journey, and because I think a lot of military people would have loved to have been a good footballer and follow that life. And obviously, I think a lot of people who get into certain disciplines always interest other people who get into other disciplines, whether that's sporting or non-sporting. And I love just meeting people, so I'm always fascinated. I'll just, if I find someone interesting, I'll just walk over and start talking to them. And again, it comes from my grandmother of, no one's better or worse than you. And I always start with the premise of there's something good here that I can find. This person there's something this person is brilliant at, and it's my job to find it. Obviously, most people will offer you what they're brilliant at straight out the gate. I fucking do this and I do that. And obviously, you realise very quickly they're probably not brilliant if they're brilliant at 86 things and they know every. The people who are brilliant tend not to say an awful lot until you actually, move the chains with them. And as I say, you come across all weird and wonderful people from all across the military, and fortunate enough to count some SF guys as kind of really good friends, and they've worked with me in clubs I've been in, and still to this day. I was on the phone with one of them yesterday, who was the doctor for the SBS. So when you get into that kind of mindset of the military, everything I go back to with them is always, I'd have loved to have taken the challenge on, but I always worried about my obedience. Like, even when I think back to being a kid, I remember, like, as you can imagine, I got a strong opinion at times. I'd believe something with the core of me being, and like the teacher wouldn't have it, and I'd be trying to find out why. Especially when I was in a Roman Catholic school, and it became about like kind of religious education, which I kind of thought was, a little bit futile at the time. I've changed, and I'm agnostic and atheist and everything in between. And I am kind of spiritual today, but I always would ask questions. I'd be like, well, you just said this, miss. And they answered the first question. After about the third question, it was like, get out the room, you're being kind of disruptive. And it wasn't. I just wanted to know. I have a real thirst for the why.
Would you say you was more insubordinate or more curious?
Your kids and at the time, you fucking... We had like a fantasy football league that we were playing in, or you'd be drawing kits. You didn't really want to know. But I'm looking at science going, who cares about like the periodic table? Like I just want to have a game of footy at dinner time, and I just can't wait to get to training tonight. We've got a game Saturday, and I just want to be out playing footy. I don't want to be, 12, 13, 14-year-old boys don't want to be locked in classrooms for hours, especially in the warm months. You're just looking out the window. And that, unfortunately, with certain, comprehensive school teachers is seen as disruptive. Luckily, I think nowadays I may well be ADHD or medicated. There's a period where these kids have probably been slowed down or sped up in some form of fashion. And as I say, you just grow up with this inquisitive thing. Like I always knew, I'm always looking at the teachers thinking, I'm going to do stuff and be somebody like you aren't. I always remember, going and seeing a careers advisor at like 14 or something. And he's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, I want to play football. And she just started laughing at me. She openly laughed, and she went, people from around here kind of don't do that. Like, it's, you watch your backup plan. And I was like, I'm going. I'm going to this. That's
fully
what I'm
committed.
Do. Yeah, she was like, you must have a backup plan. I was like, I was thinking about the military. Like that was my backup plan. I was like, right, I've got that. Because at that point you could get a trade, and, I had loads of energy, and I liked, I was fit, and, you want to test yourself. And I was like, right, let's, I don't want to stay around here, because, you see the jobs people are in, and I'd seen obviously lots of people who love and care about who are doing jobs and like still doing them some regards to today. And also, you wanted to get out. I want to get out into the world. And, you've obviously seen people from Liverpool, mainly like the Beatles and stuff like that. And you think, there's a big wide world out there. And because my gran had got pregnant with my dad, I think about like 17 or 18, my nans, and obviously got married and dead early then. She'd always said to us, go and live your lives. Don't be settling down early. Don't be getting girlfriends. Go and all the, because she hadn't had that. She'd been in the family environment, and she had 5 kids and brought them up. They're all kind of right after each other, and then worked 4 jobs to kind of make sure that they had a better start in life than her. And, for us, she was always saying, go and see the world. And she always used to say to me, she said, I want you to make it as a footballer, but I don't want you to become famous. And I used to like, oh, shut up, Nan. How am I going to be able to buy your house or get what, you know what I mean? And she'd go, no, I just don't. And she was prophetic in many, many regards, but looking back on that, I could see what she was trying to kind of, you can have a nice house and play kind of maybe Division 4, Division 3 in England. You definitely can now, even the conference now. And she didn't want that. She didn't want me to have to kind of be in that spotlight where everybody's, you have to grow up in it, and every mistake is, analysed and overanalyzed, and obviously sells kind of content.
Did you ever think that one day you would get an England cap?
Yeah, I always believed it. And as I say, you get what you believe, you get what you aim at. Maybe I didn't believe I could get 100. Maybe I didn't believe I could get 50. But certainly growing up, it's every kid's dream. It only comes online as, fuck me, this is a reality. It's like saying I want to be an astronaut, I want to go to the moon. But there's only like 17 people who've been to the moon. So it's like, in essence, that's what every kid who loves football, around the globe is kind of aiming to do now, play in the Premier League. It's the biggest global league, I believe. And obviously, for us as an Englishman, for me as an Englishman, even though I'm a Scouser, some people in Liverpool see it as a slightly different principality. And you can see why. Well, for me, I was always connected to England. I always loved England and wanted to play for England. And, to get that under-21s cap was massive for me. Scored my first goal at Goodison, where I grew up watching the game on the terraces for the 21s was good. And against a good team in Portugal with, obviously, Cristiano and that playing. And then to, obviously make me England debut. For me, it's a bit strange because I only played once. And it was when Wembley was getting done. So it was at Old Trafford. We played Spain at Old Trafford. So, a great game because Spain went on to win the Euros and the World Cup in the next couple of tournaments. But also, and I've played at Wembley once in the playoff final for QPR and won. And I've played, obviously, for England at Old Trafford. So, and I see it as that's the problem with England. I don't think England will win a World Cup until that problem's resolved.
QPR Man City.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that game. Talk to me about that incident.
Well, that's when I won the Premier League, isn't it?
Mm.
For City. So obviously the stoppage time that we get the most iconic Aguero kind of Premier League finished crescendo to a season is in the stoppage time for me.
Because you're going to go down. Some of your antics are going to go down in history.
Yeah, they're not designed at the time for that. You just you're on the field, you're on the battlefield, and you're trying your best to do what you need to do to get your team. And sometimes you make mistakes, and some are bigger than others. and that was a big mistake. QPR could have been relegated, so that was my major concern. Because I could, if results would have been differently, fortunately they weren't that day, but results would have been differently. City may well have won the league, but QPR could have been relegated, and then I'd have had to live with. I see it as a light-hearted cross. Like, I really don't give a shit about the incident now. I think it's fucking hilarious. I wish I hadn't done it, but obviously I think it's funny.
Talk me through it, because I've seen it on camera.
But if QPR had been relegated, there was lads whose contracts were like salary deductions and stuff like that in it. So if I'd have had to carry that for the next year, I'd have just been like, I've like cost you half your salary for me getting sent off, because if we'd have got a draw, we'd have stayed up. Luckily, we were safe and City won the league, so it was the kind of best of both worlds.
Did that kick off a big fight?
No, not really, no. What had happened, obviously, they'd gone. Like, they City haven't won a league for a long period of time. They had all the Arab money going in, Mancini in there, and they'd bought a host of superstars without really finding a way across the finish line. So, they were nervous, and we kind of fed off that. They took an early lead in the game, but we got back in it. And sometimes when you're competing with, certainly in a team regard, if people shit the pants, certainly at the level we play, it's very, very quickly picked up. And in our sport, unfortunately, as good as Aguero is, unfortunately, if there's two other lads on their team, your Julian Lescott's and that, whose arsehole drops out in key positions at key times, then you're in big, big trouble. In boxing, it's one-on-one. In other sports, there's slightly different formats, like rugby 15-on-15. In football, it's 10-on-10, really. The keepers can have a little bit of a say in it, but they're tending to be there to mop up any mistakes that the rest of us have made. And, a few players in their team shit the pants, like physically couldn't handle what was going down, and they got the tail up and thought, that was the relief. And then when someone put you back on your ass, which we did, and then, a few of them started to lose the rag a little bit. And it ended up me and Tevez having a bit of an altercation. He lost his rag. And then in response to that, I lost my rag with him. But unfortunately for me, my retaliation was seen by... I don't think it was, actually, when I've seen the replay back. I think he guessed, albeit he guessed rightly.
I'm trying to work out...
I think he guessed the line.
Did you stamp on his leg?
No. I blocked him off from a throw, and as I blocked him off, he's kind of... if someone cuts across you kind of on the back. And, he could have just pushed me in the back. But he's ended up landing in like I don't know, it was a knee or an elbow, and then like a kind of like half hook around the head. And obviously, when you turn around, he's meant it or he hasn't meant it. And obviously the fight or flight in me, if I can just give myself like 10 or 15 seconds to allow the kind of more mature, kingly energy to, the Jungian kingly energy to come on board, I tend to make the right decisions. Unfortunately for me, there's a 15 to 20 minutes delay in the processor. I'm hopefully getting a bit better, a bit quicker as I get older, but it's still several seconds beyond the threshold of where I'd like it to be.
Is that fire still in you even now?
Yeah, it's just intrinsic to your personality.
Try and manage it.
Yeah, I always remember speaking with Steve Black, the great Stevie Black, about this, who's the best man, mentor, philosopher, sports coach I've ever met in my life. And, we would talk about all the different, variants of elite level sports coaches out there now. You kind of Professor Steve Peterson, who's worked with, all the Olympians. And I don't know whether he's in vogue so much now, but he was really in vogue for a period after Chris Hoy wins. And, we have a bit of an Olympic gold haul at successive Olympics. And he always worked, kind of the chimp paradox, that we all have a kind of chimp. That's why I spoke to you earlier on about kind of chimpanzees, because ultimately that's what I think we are. I know we think we're something better than that, but I do think we are a kind of really aggressive, really intelligent ape. And the more I watch people, and I love watching people and just taking them in, the more and more, especially if you walk around with like AirPods in and stuff, we're very, very animalistic. Some would argue lots of different species kind of intermingled in it. You see all these wokey, and I don't want that kind of spirit animal that they talk about. You do see people that have a certain type of energy. And anyway, to digress, Blackie would always say about the kind of, the nature of somebody. Like you've got what you've got, and your job is to kind of figure that out in the trials and tribulations of life. It's not going to be easy. Because it's just plain saying, you don't really learn much. It's the up and the down and life not being fair, and that formulates your personality so that, if you start out as a kind of young caterpillar, that by the end of your life, when you're on your deathbed and dying, it's kind of metamorphosed into a kind of butterfly. There's different stages where you shed. You have to maybe drop a circle of friends, or drop a job, or drop a habit, or drop a fucking an ecstasy or something, just to find a different route or a different map into your kind of psyche and develop as a person. So Blackie would always say about kind of fanning the flames, where your Steve Peters types are all about putting a box around emotion, getting the emotion, channel the emotion. And Blackie would be like, nah, fuck, like, that's not the way, like, that. Get it going, get the fire burning, and then see how fucking big it can blaze, like, funny. Obviously you don't want to destructively burn people down, but who knows how big you can get it. And if you get collective, one person on their own's a silo, but if you get a collective flame burning, which I think, when I look at some of the stuff, really strong movements across countries, that's what people do. For just causes, people come together, get that fire burning. I've seen it with the Hillsborough families, and in spite of opposition, in spite of people trying to put stuff under the carpet, you can, if you're committed over a long period, you can certainly affect change.
Speaking of commitment, talk to me about the time you committed to knocking out your teammate during training.
Yeah, he deserved it. Fully deserved it.
Yeah, because I only get snippets. The media will only put the bits in they want you to read. So what actually really? Because you knocked him clean unconscious, didn't you?
So what happened was we were kind of vying for position, in terms of, when I say vying for position, I'm being as kind as I can to him. Like, I was obviously one of the starting figures in the City team, and I'm kind of like, I need to move here. I'm in and around the England squad, and at the time, Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, Scott Parr, Michael Carrick, Jermaine Jenas, Keane, there's Scholes, there's loads of really good English midfielders around at this time, like, who I'm going, they're all at bigger clubs than me, and they're all, better than me, because they're older and they're playing. And for me to get in and compete with them on a week-by-week basis would give me a chance of maybe getting more international caps, because you're obviously, as a boxer, you think you can beat other boxers. You've got to have that self-belief to get yourself in the arena. So City at the time had plateaued a little bit, and for no other reason, and there was a fantastic guy who owned the club, John Wardle. Doesn't get anywhere near enough credit in City's history. I know they're all Abu Dhabi and all the oil money, but there was people like John Wardle who took over the club after the kind of Peter Swales, Franny Lee, David Bernstein era. John's, I think, famous for JD Sports. I think that was the big sports company. I think he's involved in Foot Asylum now. He's a fantastic guy, really good, well-mannered, good owner. But football just got gigantic. You couldn't just be a multi-millionaire. You had to be a kind of hundreds of millions, and now you've got to be in the billions to own a football club and sustain it at Premier League level to keep kind of up with the Joneses. And John was kind of, spending from his own fortune to keep Man City afloat at the time. Now, we were in the kind of bottom to middling of the Premier League, Stuart Pearce, the manager, Kevin Keegan before. But for the period, the club had kind of been in the wilderness. When I joined them, they were in the Championship. I was 14 when I joined them. And then they went, like, a couple of years later, went into Division 3. I don't know any supporters, but from around these ways. Gillingham, they beat, if you remember, in the memorable playoff final where they were behind and somehow miraculously got back in the game and then won on penalties. And then they went up again to the Prem with Joe Royle, straight back down in the first year. They sacked him and Kevin Keegan came in. So I had about a 4-year period where City were kind of yo-yoing. Then Keegan came in and under John Wardle, put City back in the Premier League and, as I say, kept the club afloat when, if we hadn't stayed in the league, never mind, getting into the top group, the club could have gone in a completely different direction. And as I say, John's money was massive, but also, player sales. Sean Wright-Phillips out of our academy, sold to Chelsea, was, kept the lights on. So the team was always regressing, not progressing. So for me to compete with better players, I needed to progress, but I also had I'm a loyal person. I had City give me my opportunity, and I wanted to drag City into, kind of get City into a better position. But obviously I knew I was swimming in the face of poor investment after poor investment, and you see that through the, in football terms, it's like having a gym. The fighters that come through the door, you go out and having a scrap, 11 of yous or 16 of yous now, with your 5 subs. And in them days it was only 14, because you'd only have 3 subs. And you're going out for a scrap, throw the ball off the pitch pretty much in the Premier League at that time. You're going out for a fight. Most footy games, and whoever wins the physicality. By the way, the ref's there to make sure it doesn't boil over. But you got to go and win the physicality. We're all talented players here. It's who's the fittest, who fucking wants it the most, who can get the momentum and get on top today. Very much, professional souls stealing, from all of us. And obviously in a team thing, you can be weak in a team sport and have a bad day, and a good team and a good group can get you through. So, for us, in terms of everybody who came in the building's almost under a vetting process. Is he going to fucking put in what we've put in to be here? Because, we've been part of moving the chains. And 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞 comes in, and he, come from Italy and Lazio, and he was mates, I think, with Sylvain Distin. We had a decent French contingent in the club. We had a good few foreigners, and they all contributed massively. There was like some really good lads. Some mates I've still got now, Dutch lads, German lads, whatever. Because I think this is the reason I've taken the stance I have on women's football is, and women commentating on the men's football is very, very much a meritocracy. The best fucking right back plays right back because we need to win. And if we don't play him, then we're going to get our asses handed to us. No matter how good all of us are, the opposition are going to sense that this is the manager's son or the manager's nephew or someone who's... And they're just going to target him, and we're going to get beat. We're going to lose the game. So you want, regardless of what someone's sexuality is, what a person's religion is, all we're asked about is, can you fucking do the job? Can you hold the line? Can you do the job necessary? And we have a load of chances coming through the building at City at this time, who were maybe in the city for the nightlife, who were maybe in the city for other things, but football definitely wasn't a priority. And obviously that impacts the team over the course of the year, when you've got lads kind of smoking cigarettes in the training ground, stuff like that, because that's what they do in Italy. But obviously we have a duty of care to kind of, our standards in this country. And anyway, the team is mediocre and managers not at the level, and obviously, there becomes a bit of tetchiness in the group. And usually, like anything, sorted out in the sparring. That's how you sort it out. You're not happy, get in the ring, get your gloves on, sort it out. So for us, it's on the training pitch.
Did you dislike Darbo long before you knocked him out?
He was kind of irrelevant to me. I played, look at the data, I play all the games, I start all the time. So it's easier to, if I need a breather or I don't feel like playing, that's what you're here for, mate. You know what I mean? Like, people aren't paying to watch you. Like, I'm the one who people are coming to watch, and others, but like, no one's really asked about you.
So what happened on that day when you knocked him out?
Well, so what happens is we're training in a game, we're preparing for the Manchester derby. Our season has kind of petered to end, but we've got a Manchester derby. And we were just training one day, and I think the managers kind of, everyone knows the team. It might have been like a Thursday or something like that. And, there's like sparring, but there's a lighter version of sparring because it's like 48 hours out from a derby. So your work's got to be done in the months before, or certainly if you're working that week, it's on probably the Tuesday's your graft day. If you want to get back in the team, you're more likely, certainly at that stage of the season, April, managers made his decision. There's no fucking, you train well or not, you're not going to change his mind for the Manchester derby, Anyway, so 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞 got, in my opinion, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞 had a bit of the ump with, he wasn't going to start in the Manchester derby at Old Trafford. So we trained that way, and obviously he was on the opposite team to me, so I'm training, and he ends up leaving a tackle on me that was unnecessary, in my opinion, on a Thursday. So my response to that is to, make him aware of that without saying anything about it. I'm not going to show that you've bothered me because, in many, many regards, certainly from a footballer's perspective, you're almost bullying him a little bit by then going and flattening him. So the next challenge that presented itself, which wasn't long afterwards, because it's quite small-sided games, it basically goes back to 1-1. He wasn't happy with that and took it to 2-1. And at that point, I have a decision to make. My decision is, next challenge I make has to be above the previous one. And also, there's a game coming on Saturday, so in the midst of going into a contest, you've got to be mindful that you might finish second. So it ends up verbal, and we're arguing. And at that point, he's only been in the building probably the first part of the season, and I'm only 23 at the time. So and there was a lot of seniors there who 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, because I come from a kind of Roman Greco boxing background, before MMA existed, there was kind of people by ours doing either Krav Maga, or because there was people who taught it on the estate. Live facing us was Tony Collins, who I think is still the Great Britain's over 60 Roman Greco wrestling champion, and he's 72. So I used to go wrestling and boxing. My granddad boxed in the local area and started a boxing club. So I was always capable of looking after myself, albeit because I was younger than the lads. I'd go and roll on the mats in the gym and have a wrestle and a grapple with 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, who's 6'4" and is like a tarantula and knows how to look after himself. To the point where you'd have to tap. But we'd have a bit of a rough and tumble, all good-hearted. Obviously he was the captain, and they were. So you was a kind of hierarchy, chimpanzee, dominant hierarchy that runs within a club, and you always respect your elders. And 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞 kind of sat in the middle of that. He was mates with them and didn't really know our group, and obviously was competing with us. So we end up in this verbal then after the 3 challenges or whatever. We end up in a verbal, and he's walking off the pitch, and I think I was saying, well, you're shit, because he is, in my opinion, and obviously I'd say what I feel sometimes. I just kept saying, he was saying something in French, obviously not, I didn't, speak it fluently like I do now. But
We'll come on to that.
Thought I might. So I didn't fully understand what he said, but I knew he was getting after me, do you know what I mean? So obviously I just kept saying, he was walking out in front of me. He's about 15 paces in front of me. The session's finished because Pierce knew it was bubbling over, and he finishes the session because he's got a game in 48 hours. He's kind of walking off in front of me, and he's chuntering, and I'm just keep saying, mate, you're just shit. Just crap. Fucking shit at football. And after maybe 4 or 5 of them, he snapped. He just snapped, and he spins on his heels and runs towards me. I am moving towards him because we're walking in the same direction, but he spins on his heels and runs towards me. Now, I've been involved in a number of confrontations over the years, especially, as I say, growing up where I grow up. So, as I say, he's not to know that, and comes towards me. And as he gets within, say, a metre of me, I just see his hand come back. So for me, I'm like, okay, he's not coming to tickle me. Very, very quickly you can process the situation. So at that point, you slip, and I didn't know what was coming. I'm thinking it's going to be a dig. And as I've moved to line him up, his hands come, and only halfway I see he's open palmed. And I know I'm going to get clipped, but I've already unloaded. My jab's already gone. I'm out the way. So I know I'm going to get clipped, but I know I'm going to get my jab off anyway. Get my jab off, boom, and the jab hits him right on the button. And as you have a scrap, don't you? So, it doesn't have to be the hardest shots. Them straight shots that you're not expecting, boom, and lights him up. Obviously, the cross is coming straight after it, and that was the end of him. But I didn't know. So as I've hit him, he's out cold, but my momentum now is taking me onto him. But because of how quick it happened, obviously the lads have just seen him run. The lads are kind of still in between it. I'm now on top of him. And where I'm from, the fight gets stopped. Do you know what I mean? I'm not MMA. I never grew up in that where people tap and stuff. Where I'm from, I've seen people hit the ground and get back up and cause serious damage, like stab people, pick up an iron bar, whatever. So the fight's not over until people stop you and say, that's it, he's done, it's over. So obviously I've stayed on top of him until I was pulled off. Lads say it was a couple of punches. The lads were there quite quick. I think Danny Mills has put a bit of VAT on his story to try and make himself look a bit cooler. But, him, Trevor Sinclair, Distan and all that, they were all there and they separated. But at that point, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞's no longer of this realm. Luckily for him, the lads stopped, because at that point, once you're in a fight, it's like You punch someone in the face where I'm from, there's a severe consequence for that, and you're very, very fortunate if you get out of, if you get out of the situation like that with, I've seen people have their ears bit off, the nose bit off. So I'm thinking, if he not, I don't know what he's going to do to me. Could kill me. And as I say, afterwards when they wake him up and stuff, I'm already inside, and the lads are all like, yeah. I'm like, no problem, no remorse. Do it again tomorrow. If I see him, and I've said, and it's not me offering him out, if I see him at any point and he's not happy with what happened and my version of events, then, there's misfits, I'll happily, because when you got someone's number like that, he fucking knows. That's why he went to the newspapers and put sellotape on his eye and tried to get me nicked. Because if he'd knocked me out, I wouldn't have been phoning the busies and selling the exclusive to the newspapers, trying to get someone arrested and put in jail. I'd have accepted I was fucking a bit aggressive, and if you roll the roulette wheel, sometimes it doesn't come out on the colour that you want.
Remember back in the day, football's notorious hard men, Graham Souness, Vinnie Jones, you can lump in there. Who was the other one? Nobby Stiles. All these soccer's hard men. You'll probably be remembered as one of soccer's hard men.
No.
And you don't really see them no more, do you?
No, there's no contact in the game now. I think controversial character just because of what's going on. But like even when I look at that, like Suey, and there was an era where it was fucking tough out there, but like violent. Some of the tackles you've seen them boys do are, even Roy Keane's on Alfie Ireland. That's for me, that's beyond the threshold. Like I'm fighting with Roy after the game, like, or any time I see Roy on site, we're fighting. If he ever done that to me, on site for the rest of his life, like, because that's trying to maim you. That for me, I like hard and fair, but with footballers, there's a duty of care not to be trying to break anybody else's body and limbs. I think, for me, that crosses the threshold. Whereas I say, and there's a couple of people I'm like that within the game where I'm like, yes, and they always, because of where I'm from, I'd say this is not a football argument. Like this is, Mark Hughes being one of them. I told him when I locked the door on him in his office, I said, listen, this is not like footy. This is not manager to player. This is like me and you for the rest of our lives. I said, and the way you're carrying on here, I said, don't forget you're 20 odd years older than me. You might be 75 on a beach in Dubai. And the last person you want to see is me. And if I get an opportunity to fucking make it 1-1, I will.
What did Mark Hughes do to you?
He just acted the cunt. He just thought, as they do, Liam, he thought being the manager means he can do whatever he wants to you. Forgetting that football's Narnia. It's like a fairy tale land. It's like fantasy land. There's a big wide world outside of that.
So you and him had a beef?
Not had a beef. He just tried. He tried in a stupid, ill-coordinated way to try and psychologically dominate you. Right. Which is fine if you're capable of it. But you should never ever try that to somebody that you're not capable of, because it can really, really blow up in your face, and did for him. Luckily for him, I can let stuff go. But there was a period, and I seen him a little bit later on in Dubai, where I was in the pool with my kids and he was in the pool. This is about 10 years later. And it was on, like, and he knew it was on, and he had to go and walk around the other way. Because I see him look over and go, for fuck's sake. Because I told him in his office when he was acting the we can sort this out. There's no problem at all. Because at that point, it was really, really personal. And I was like, look, this is beyond. You're now using me as almost an example to the others. And unfortunately for you, I ain't prepared to stand for that.
Yeah, I never knew that. That's interesting. He was a Man United legend, wasn't he, back in the day, Mark Hughes?
Was, yeah. Yeah, he played for Everton as well. I kind of liked him, obviously, Chelsea as well. Really disappointed, with him as a person, like, so, which is what you find with people sometimes. Sometimes it is. Piercy, the same.
Stuart Pearce?
Yeah, sometimes it is just bluster, like bravado. Well, I suppose a lot of people do that to protect themselves, don't they? You create this persona.
He was another tough footballer back in the day, wouldn't he? He'd get the ball smashed in his face and he'd just do that look, wouldn't he?
But again, it's like a stage show, isn't it?
Bravado. Nonsense.
Yeah, and the problem for me is when I meet people, I want you to be genuine to what you are. I don't mind what you are, but obviously if you project one image, and again, you meet these people all across your journey, especially on these council estates in these inner city areas, these faux hard men. And then you meet people who are really dangerous or really, really capable. And, you just have a low threshold for the bullshit. And as I say, there's lots of actors, we're all at some degree, I suppose, acting. But there's lots of actors in football, and, they're only exposed sometimes when when the heat gets turned up on them. And as I say, I want to go through life and get on with people. It's only when people decide to play some kind of psychological game or try to use some kind of hierarchy or dominance hierarchy to, gain favour with the rest of the group.
What other people have you clashed with over the years?
Oh, fucking hell. I'm quite an abrasive character, as you can imagine. I can fall out with anybody at any time, really, really can, because I do believe in challenging people. Like, if I see something, I say it. There's part of me that wishes I didn't, and I've learned to kind of taper that. I'm not quite Joe's got Tourette's, but certainly I think there's lots of times when people are like, he must have Tourette's. I can't believe he just said that out loud. But then I believe in getting straight to the core of an issue and moving past it. If you don't like someone, get it sorted.
How many red cards have you had in your career?
I think my career total's like 8 red cards. Maybe someone will check that, maybe 8 or 9. And I think I've only got like 3 or 4 straight reds. So I've had a couple of stupid double yellows and stuff like that. And then my record maybe's pumped up a little bit because for the Aguero incident, I actually got 3 red cards for that incident. So they done me red card for Elbow and Tevez. So I got 3 games for that. I got 4 games for the second red card for Knee and Aguero, and then I got 5 games for attempted headbutt. I think it was Vincent Kompany. They said attempted headbutt, and I just said I was trying to get Lescott's hand off my face. So obviously the FA sided with, their evidence rather than mine, and I got a 12-match ban, which, to say, I don't think you can keep a good man down. So I obviously get banished, 12-game ban, and I ended up signing for Olympique Marseille, which was phenomenal.
You also got an 18-month ban.
I got an 18-month ban, yeah.
I mean, so without me getting too personal...
Reduced to 9.
So this was from gambling?
Well, yeah, so what happened was I started out in an era where you could bet. We could bet on anything as long as we weren't playing in the game. So I could bet on, the football coupon on a Saturday, as long as it didn't involve the league I was playing in. I think it got tightened up to, and then the club you were playing for, which makes sense. And then it starts getting tightened up over the next couple of years, and tightened up and tightened up and tightened up and tightened up to the point where it got like you can't have a bet on any football. So I couldn't have a bet because I was playing in football on the South American football, so like a league match in Uruguay, because I was a footballer. And anyone who worked in football, I think it got tightened up even further to anybody who worked in football. So even if you were like a masseur or a chef for a football team, you couldn't bet on football, which is nuts. And what I found out it was all about was protecting, obviously, the Far East syndicates and the Far East betting markets because of the kind of corruption that it was seen in France and corruption seen in Spain and Italy, that referees or clubs or teams or players could be bought, and the Premier League was seen as this kind of utopia of sports betting that was clear of any corruption and match fixing allegations, and the Asian markets could lay and astronomical sums on the outcomes of Premier League games, which is why they're all sponsored by mad Chinese symbols as betting companies. That's why you see the explosion of betting companies from that you've never heard of, because of the big problem for them is obviously the David Coote thing that's just gone down, because that, if someone's had a video of him sniffing cocaine at some kind of gay orgy, whenever he's been to, getting his head bummed in by some fucking Herbert, and then they've had it on video for 2 years, and what have they been getting him to do? What decisions has he been making? What yellow cards has he been? So I think that, and they've buried it, as you see, because they know that, like that. If you've had any dealings with the people who mix or frequent the old uphill gardening, cocaine sniffing scene, they usually don't do it once. They usually have a long sordid history of getting deeper and deeper into the hole.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. And if you're in that slot, then whoever's providing those narcotics, I only know because I kind of grew up with kind of people who were in that trade, and I always remember a mate of mine said, at a young age, if you're with a girl who's sniffing cocaine, which is pretty much a lot of people now, you don't have it as a bird, because she'll pretty much do anything to get it, right? And obviously the same applies obviously to the male, and especially I would imagine to a horny gay fella who's feeling suppressed by the fact that he can't come out fully because he's a Premier League or an official in a kind of Premier League space. So that kind of closet feeling is obviously led to a lot of poor decisions. For me, the biggest one being, and no one's asking the question, is the integrity of the Premier League. You know, some of the decisions he's made have to, you know, I think he's been caught, hasn't he, giving information to 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐿 out. And then he comes out in the mainstream media, I'm gay. Like 2025, nobody's asked whether you're gay or not. Like, we've got fellas boxing in the Women's Olympics here, mate. No one cares whether you do a bit of shirtlifting lifting or not.
Yeah, that's minor.
No one cares anymore. You know, the church has lost its power over, you know, Western civilization as it once did. Like, you know, it's okay to be gay. But they were then talking about putting him back in the kind of VAR space. And I'm like, this is to keep him quiet. And this is to brush under the carpet so that these Asian markets that are betting on it don't get fucking freaked out by what's going on, and the human element. You know, because, as I said to you earlier, we're all animals. And, you know, the famous Friedrich Nietzsche always said, for every man, there is a bait for which he cannot refuse. And I always say, if you're very, very lucky, you've only got one. You know, some people have got fucking 6 or 7. You know, I've definitely got more than one myself. And it's living with that. You know, no one's perfect. And, you know, when I see the world that we live in, Liam, and they're telling everybody this is how you need to be and this is what you need to do. You know, obviously David Beckham, who's an iconic sports figure in this country, deep-throating the royal family for a knighthood. Like, embarrassing, going to Davos. I like Becks. I played against him in Paris, but, like, proper got Charlie's nutsack in his deep in his fucking face for a what? For a knighthood. Like Sadiq Khan, like Jimmy Savile. Like, is that what you want to be part of? Like, for the crown? Do you know what I mean? Fuck that.
Someone like David Beckham, I feel he's got a moral obligation to the country because he's in such a privileged position and he's admired and loved by a multitude of people and generations. And when I see atrocities take place that need calling out by influential figures, I always think, not just David Beckham, but I always think, where's these big voices now? Why aren't they speaking against what's going on?
Well, you know the answer to that. Do you know what I mean? You know, for them...
Because you don't shy away from anything.
Yeah, I really, really don't care. Like, for me, as I say, for me, it's just, it is what it is. You know, at some point I will die. You know, I'm quite stoic about that. I had the realisation, you know, as I say, the peaks and the troughs, that for me, that's where the real learning takes place. Listen, nobody wants to be on the troughs because it's fucking hard. Even the peaks are hard to get to. You know, for 15 seconds or 15 minutes where you get carried around a football field and you win a trophy and then the dust settles, you think, right, what am I going to do tomorrow? You know, we're all on this kind of journey. And as I say, for me, when I look at it and I look at, you know, some of the figures and, you know, you see the praying in public, the kind of virtue signalling. And, you know, if that's what makes you happy and, you know, you need letters after your name or letters before your name, and you think, well, that makes me a better chimpanzee or a better ape than those apes, then kind of so be it. Or your house is bigger, you know, well done. You've got like loads of square foot to look at, you know, my cobwebs are higher. You know what I mean? Oh, great. Yeah. It cost me more to heat this building. Fantastic. You know, so, you know, I grew up in, as I say, in a kind of council estate, and I always envisaged living there. I always thought and I still very much ways I'm conditioned by that. You know, I don't take a lot to have a great day. I can find myself squirreled up with a book and I can have a fantastic existence. It's actually easier for me than kind of taking part in the fucking nonsense we're now calling society. And when I look at those lads and I think, well, the trials and tribulations, what happened was that, you know, everyone builds you up and knocks you down, builds you up, knocks you down. And in the end, you're just like, who gives a fuck what these people think I was going to be? And I know I'm okay with me and, you know, whatever spirituality it is you believe in. I do believe in something. I just don't know what. I'm still kind of looking and searching and probably always will be a kind of inquisitive kind of student and open to all different experiences. And I kind of was walking after like, maybe I was at Newcastle, I'd been arrested for something like 6 days in jail, I think, on remand. I finally got out and I was fucking having to commute via aeroplane from Liverpool in Hampshire to Newcastle every day for training to be in between a 7 a.m. and a 7 p.m. curfew. So you can imagine Liverpool, Hampshire to Newcastle's training ground every day. You know, it was helicopter, small plane, single prop, fucking any way I could get there to get back for this curfew. I didn't have a tag on, but it was in essence those kind of bail conditions and still playing in the Premier League. And then that sanction got lifted and you're kind of like down in the dumps. And I just remember walking my dog I was cutting through where I lived in Newcastle in Jesmond at the time. There was a graveyard at the back. I was just walking around one afternoon, like, you know, just contemplating the world. And, you know, I just remember sitting there. I was just looking at the gravestones. It was like, oh, you know, Dave Smith here, loving father, died age 62. And then I started just reading all the gravestones. And I just had this profound thought pop in my head. And I was just like, I wonder where they bury all the cunts. Where are all the cunts buried? Because there's loads of cunts in this world. Like, we fucking meet them. And there's not one in this fucking graveyard. And weirdly enough, the next graveyard I went to, I couldn't find any more in there. So I'm like, no matter what happens, when you go, if anybody actually cares to look you up, they'll tend to say nice things about you. Unless, of course, you're a 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐸 of Savile, who's obviously King Charlie's pal, where they then go and desecrate everything. You know, people forget he got a state funeral. Our mainstream media was that fucking tied up, that hamstrung by, you know, the establishment, that they couldn't out a prolific sex offender who was welcomed into the establishment and celebrated as a bastion of charity and top of the pops. And I think, well, how many of those have there been over the centuries? How many more have we missed? And if that's what you want to chase, you know, for me, they weren't my heroes. It wasn't for me to be a knight, you know, and even more so now when I see, you know, some of those people who've been given it, as I say, you know, Sadiq Khan. I don't mean to cast him in the same territory as Savile and Sadiq Khan, but like Gareth Southgate, when I'm like, okay, we're now, you know, and then also you see the, you know, the Labour peers that'll be given at the end of their tenure, or the Tory peers that are given at the end of their tenure, and you just think, this is just about enriching themselves. This is...
How does someone like you get on with the likes of Southgate or Gary Lineker?
Southgate, I've only met him a couple of times. He's not a bad fella, but slightly different personality.
I'm thinking
to
Gary
me.
Neville, sorry.
Gary Neville, I've done a podcast with Gary before I went into management. I've done a kind of series, and he was fine. Gary's just a... How do I say it as polite as I can? Just a nerd, isn't he? Like a knobhead. Remember them knobheads in school who just tell a teacher, you know, Liam's wrote his name in the school toilets, but like wouldn't out you. He'd go and tell the teacher.
He's a bit of a champagne socialist, isn't he?
Yeah, obviously. But his dad's a club man, wasn't he? Neville. So you got to think that it's and he's not going to like this, but like his nan and granddad at A level must have been a pair of cunts, because they called his dad Neville. So, and you're living in the northwest of England, so
Even out of a good sense of humour.
like you've got to be a cunt there, don't you? To put that moniker on your kid going forward. And by the way, they're not the best looking genetic pool, are they? If you look at, you know, the Nevilles and, you know, all of them, and you look at the parents, let's just say they were never going to be threatening Milan from a catwalk perspective. And, you know, then to add Neville to the first name when it's his surname, then you straight away you're up against it. So I've always kind of held that perspective whenever I think about Gary Neville. You know, you have to have some sympathy for him. You know, he doesn't start life from a advantageous position, and he was a good right back. But then, you know, this is, you know, the problem when you do pray in public like them and you align yourself to politicians, because if you're smart, which Gary professes to be, then surely you realise they're all cunts. Let's be honest. You know, at some point, you know, they're going to backdoor you, a politician, because, you know, the shapeshifters, aren't they? They'll say and do whatever's necessary to get whatever they need to do to get where they need to get to. You know, there's very few politicians who've kind of, and there is some out there, and I feel sad on them, because unfortunately they're in the minority that actually do care, actually do want to make a difference. But I just think it's that, you know, Trump's talking about draining the swamp in his first tenure. I think he's now actively pulled the plug out. It looks like there's some water going down the whirlpool, doesn't it, in the swamp? And you can imagine what the fuck we've got here, because we're still very much class system based. We still believe in, you know, the aristocracy, and that somebody's born, albeit to the same, you know, country as us. They're born almightier or better than us. And, you know, as I say, for me, when I look through my heroes and my people who inspire me, the likes of Morrissey, who spoke about, you know, Christopher Hitchens, you know, in the songs and in the debates, they spoke about what, you know, the problem is for the people of the island. You know, I'm very much a kind of Irish blood, English heart. You know, he talks in that song about he can't wait for the day when they'll be sick to death of Labour and Tory, and Oliver Cromwell's kind of royal dynasty. I mean, that's the class system you see. Charlie, as I say, the company you keep, aren't you? Lord Mountbatten was his fucking mentor, wasn't he? And, for me, I'm like, is this the fella who's setting the tone for the country? Big sausage fingers, so he clearly doesn't know, what it's like to go without. He said in his Christmas message, I give him this chance, he said in his Christmas message, diversity is our strength. And I'm like, are you not peering over your fucking moat? Are you not peering over your castle walls? Are you not smelling what's going on in this country where people are fearful of going to work for the daughters being accosted outside primary schools and secondary schools? People are fearful going to work to have a phone call to say the daughter's almost been decapitated by somebody who should have been on a terrorism watch list, has been missed 3 times in a Taylor Swift themed event in the school holidays. Like, what's going on? Like, yeah, it's all right for you in Windsor Castle, with the horses guard and all the fucking cosplay and the nonsense of you're better than us. But unfortunately, your biblical, Abrahamic, religious indoctrination of everybody is gone now. There's a whole connected world with the internet. Fortunately, I think for a lot of us on this island, Musk bought Twitter, because I'd hate to think, you see, I don't do Facebook. I got hacked, so I haven't got my Instagram back. So I just stayed on Twitter, and I know the lads use our stuff via TikTok and kind of where the kids are now, YouTube. But, whether we like it or not, we've all got a duty of care. That's the big thing I got out of my great mentors, Steve Black and Peter Kay, the Sport and Chance Clinic, Peter Kay, not the comedian. That, and my grandmother very, very much so, that you have to stand, and people like John Lennon, you have to stand for something. You have to, we'll all die, but if you die in the face of staring down the firing squad, then there's a rebellious act in it. There's a fuck Hughes, which is where I'm at. I'm like, I think Tom's there. He's obviously in solitary confinement at the minute, staring down. There's lots of people who've done more courageous things than all of us. Actually paid the ultimate sacrifice. And you think about the First and Second World War, those people who's paid the ultimate sacrifice. Is this what they paid it for? Is this what they risked it all for this socialist utopia that 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐿 and his fucking front bench are trying to build, which, is bizarre when we're allowing our pensioners, our most vulnerable people, to be attacked or to freeze in the winter months, and we're sending aid to places that have got nothing to do with us to try and influence soft power decisions that enrich corporations. I think, we're living in a dangerous time, and if you call it out and you speak about it, the state will use every single bit of its apparatus to silence you and shut you up.
Some of your tweets that have made the headlines. Now, when I was doing my due diligence for today, I was trying to find some of the tweets that you've done that have caused outrage. And for me personally, I can't find a single thing that you've tweeted that would concern or offend me at all.
The strangest thing for me is it's like 2.8 million people follow me. I don't follow 2.8 million people. So I just say what I say, and I'm not asking you to agree with it. In many regards, I don't really read the comments. It's just a kind of brain dump in some regards of, I've just seen something that I don't think is correct, and this is what I feel about it. And it's really interesting for me that every time I get pulled into an interview or a voluntary interview, it's like, well, what are you trying to do with your influence? And I'm like, it's becoming quite Orwellian, this. Like, I've read Orwell, and I've studied kind of a bit of, the Soviet gulags and the Soviet Union and other kind of weird and wonderful versions of kind of socialism, whether it was East Germany or...
You've been pulled in by the police for some of your tweets?
I've been arrested in front of my children for them. I've been...
I didn't know that.
Oh no, they've I had 4 constant days, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 2 CID each day, knocked on my house at about between 12 and kind of 2 p.m. When my missus and kids were in, it was obviously half term, so they were well aware, with full police fashion, where they give the old copper's knock and where is he, want to speak to him.
What did you tweet to warrant that?
I think I tweeted, I was watching Everton versus Crystal Palace, and I'm an Evertonian on a kind of Friday night in the FA Cup. And, you know, the women ex-players commentating, it's kind of co-commentary and pundits, for me, it's just like somebody getting the nails on a chalkboard and going down a chalkboard, because obviously I've played men's football and I know kind of what it takes to do that. And when you're hearing people who just haven't got a clue what they're on about, use words that they don't really know in conjunction with trying to enlighten the audience and you know, educate the audience, which is what I believe that role to be, then, you know, pass comment on it saying like, this is a joke. And then obviously you'd have to defend that position because of the woke mindset. You have to pick a talk show to go on. I ended up picking them all, Piers Morgan, because I thought, you know what, Piers is a little bit aligned with this, but also I understand what Piers is, the kind of jackal he is, and there's going to be a kind of ambush lying in wait. But then everybody you don't do the interview with then rounds on you. So you've got to pick one to kind of do it with, but you know that there's going to be six who spin whatever they want to fit whatever narrative they want. So then what happens is, you know, you find yourself in a situation where it's like, okay, I've said this and I genuinely believe it. You know, women who've played the women's game crossing over into the men's game, unfortunately, you've got no authority. Like, I know you think you're having people listen to you, but they're just not. So I was kind of honest about that. That opened up a, you know, obviously misogynistic and all, like he's a dinosaur and all these attacks, personal attacks against me. And then I had to double down or apologise. So I had to say, no, this is what I believe. So then I done Piers' show, which is kind of live, isn't it? And obviously 3 women on there. One was allied in the end.
Did Piers Morgan set you up
Hale
for
Davis. Piers was telling me I was going on my own, just me and him. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's how it's going to play out. So that's like, no, that's what they've said. I'm like, look, there's going to be an ambush. I'm going to get ambushed there, so I just need to make sure I know what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it. So I was quite clear in that regard, and I'd done question time and stuff before, the news night, Paxman and all that. So I was, like, I'm not fearful of going in and having a conversation, especially if it's a topic I feel strong about and have what I believe to be expert knowledge. Like, I am an expert at football. Like,
Facts.
Yeah. You're telling me this person's an expert, and I'm like, no, that person isn't an expert. That person's an expert at women's football, and that's a different fucking planet altogether. Like, that's in a different solar system as well. Probably a different galaxy, if we want to be honest. You know, you see Serena Williams talking about John McEnroe's comments, where she said, look, I wouldn't be in the top 450 in the men's game. You know, Andy Murray had beat me in 10 minutes in straight sets, and she's the best woman player ever, the GOAT, allegedly. I tend to agree, but, you know, some Steffi Graf and maybe Martina Navratilova fans mightn't have that. So they were saying to me, is that the hill you're going to die on? I was like, no, this is what I believe. I believe journalistic standards are being pulled down. I believe in a meritocracy, and these people are being given the job, not because they're most qualified. It's because they tick a box. And I was saying they had to tick a box or lick a box. You know, the gender or the colour of their skin pigmentation is what's got them in. And there's lots of people who are well qualified for this, and their only smite is the white and the middle-aged. And I think that's the wrong message to send, especially if we're the ultimate meritocracy football, where the best player, regardless of sexuality or skin colour or religious belief, gets in the team. And then all of a sudden, once you stop playing and you've risked your body, and by the way, these lads have risked not only injuries, you know, all the injuries you'd accumulate on your football journey from being a young kid, you know, tackles and bumps and bruises, but also, as we're now seeing with a lot of ex-footballers, you know, the CTE injuries that are running rampant now with lots of players from yesteryear. You know, John Styles, Nobby Styles, his lad, has done a lot of great work on this, and, you know, there's lots of information out there if people want to get it. But again, lots of players now are showing signs of what we've seen in the NFL with the concussion protocols, and rugby we're seeing now of heading the ball a lot is leading to dementia and early onset illnesses due from the amount of impacts they've had at a young age. It's why I think up until the age of about 9 now, kids can't head the ball. So obviously, and we've got a huge standoff there because the PFA don't want to support lots of the families, and they've got, you know, LS Lowry Paytons locked away in a vault, and yet ex-footballers' families are having to sell houses, selling medals, selling replica jerseys to fund the aftercare because they've got dementia or Parkinson's or something that could well have been brought on by the service to the game, literally putting the body on the line. Now, some of the lads in between that, like, for instance, a Dean Windass, who's just come online saying he's got dementia, can't get a job now commentating on the game because you've got Karen, who's played 78 games for Charlton Athletic Ladies and's got 68 caps for England fucking Lionesses and played at 74 Nintendo Cups, you know. She's in there now telling 𝐟𝐨𝐿 what he should be doing rather than Dean Windass. You know, and yeah, Dean's got to provide for his family, as most men have. Most men are the breadwinners. You know, unfortunately for most women who play football, they tend not to be mothers. You know, it's a very lesbian kind of dominated game, like women's hockey, I would imagine. Whereas the male game, you know, most of the fellas are breadwinners, not just for the immediate family, but in lots of regards, as we see with the African boys, for a big extended family. Well, don't forget, you know, the northern working class kids, northern and southern, all over the country actually, are very much like Africans. You know, when you live in Knowsley and you've got no sixth form provision and you've got the second highest unemployment rate in the country for maybe the last 40 years, then unfortunately there's parts of Africa that, you know, are underdeveloped, but there's also parts of this country that have been left behind and underdeveloped. And as I say, you come through with this mindset of providing for your family. Luckily for us, in the 90s, early 90s, there was an attempted breakaway to a European Super League by the big clubs. That brought on Sky TV and obviously the Premier League as we know it, which meant all the best players in the world came here, all the best coaches in the world came here, and most of the big money in the world is now flowing through our league, which meant that the people here who were good enough to fight in this league, you know, to play in this organisation, were going to get rewarded handsomely. And, you know, as a boxer, you know there's going to be punch-drunk issues further down the line. You know, you're going to have, you know, if you play rugby, you're going to have shoulder and body injuries. We all sign up for that. So I think there's an element of players that know, you know, there's going to be consequences for what you did in your adolescence and in your prime. But also, as soon as you stop playing now, you know, your job opportunities in working in the sports media are severely limited because you're white and you're middle-aged, not because you don't know what you're doing. And these DEI policies that we see that are affecting, you know, lots of businesses socially have creeped into our game. Now, I'm not a businessman. I'm not able to comment on what goes on in the big business world and in the rest of society, but I am, I believe, qualified to comment on professional sports and specifically football. And then as soon as I've commented on it, lots of people have connected with me because clearly this is a big, wide issue. And it's coincided, you know, the last 12 months, 18 months, whatever, with a lot of these policies either being shown for what they are, which is not to the benefit of society, whether it's the 𝐾𝐨𝐬𝐿 kind of plagiarism issue as the head of Harvard where she was removed. And we're seeing now Trump and Musk and, you know, his band of merry men and women with Tulsi Gabbard are going through the US now and eradicating these kind of segregation policies in essence. You're just segregating against the white person. You know, you can't get a job in the fire brigade because your skin colour's the wrong colour. Well, do you know when the flame's there and it's fucking burning your kids, who do you want coming in to save you? The fella who's ticked the box or the woman who's ticked the box because of skin pigmentation or sexual orientation, or the fucking best candidate for the job. Similarly, if you're going under heart surgery in the morning, a mate of mine last week went in for triple heart bypass, you end up having to get quadruple. Who do you think he wants doing the surgery? If you said to me, I've got a Jewish fella here who's got a 96% success rate, I've got a transgender fella here who's got 98% success rate, and I've got a Pakistani fella here who's got 100% success rate. Who do you want to operate on you? Pakistani every day of the week. I want the best person to operate. And I think the problem we've got in society is we're sending the wrong message to future generations. We're saying don't work hard. We're saying after COVID, don't go back to the workplace. We're saying cheat, lie, steal, send a sex tape, sell a story on somebody. We're not saying, like, even when you see how they've structured, you know, for businesses with this recent government, you might as well cheat the system, because every who cheats the system seems to get rewarded. And people who try and do it right, the working class person, it's why I had the big finger, and I've got to be careful to mention his name, Jeremy Vine, because you're going along in traffic, there's fucking working fellas who are in standstill traffic in London because London's overpopulated and the grid system can't handle it. And they've got the phone out to have a doom scroll on fucking, to try and just switch the brain off from the monotonous task of providing for the family in the height of energy prices being at, and food prices and cost of living being at the level it is. And you've got cunts like you fucking driving around with a camera on your head, getting them fucking 3 and 6 points on the licence, or fucking trying to crash into them to fucking cause some kind of fucking commotion. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and then there's people who follow these cunts. Do you know what I mean? Who are like, oh, great, yeah, you shouldn't be on your phone. I'm like, it's different being on your motorway on your fucking phone as you're driving and sitting in standstill traffic after a hectic day at work or getting to work.
There's bigger things that need dealing with.
There's bigger things that need dealing with. Spend that time and energy catching the fucking pedos or the grooming gangs.
And the terrorists.
Or the terrorists, yeah. Yeah, that'll be a start.
Now, I want to talk about the Anthony Walker murder. And I know that you won't shy away from that because you spoke about skin colour and race, and I think the media are hell-bent on making us think everyone's racist so that we clash.
Yeah.
So that was a very high-profile case. It's probably second to the Stephen Lawrence murder. And your cousin and your brother went to jail for murder. Your cousin put an axe in his head and killed him.
Yeah.
Can you give me some detail on that? And was it racially aggravated? Was it racially motivated, or is that the media spin?
I wasn't there, so I will never know. You know, all I've ever heard is second-hand information, and you have to think of who's inclined to be economical with the truth and who's going to tell you the truth. I think somebody who's served a long period of jail is more likely to tell you kind of what's happened than obviously some journalist who's, you know, every single day has a job to sensationalise and make copy. I remember it vividly because I'd obviously been involved in a skirmish myself where I'd been I'd been sent home from Thailand for fighting with a teammate in a bar, drunk. I was actually slapped an Everton fan, a 15-year-old Everton fan in the bar, and I didn't know he was 15. We'd finished, come to the end of a pre-season tour in Thailand, playing in a Premier League competition. And we were due to play Everton in the last game. It was like a 3-game tournament, tie all 11, us against Bolton and Everton. And I think the managers told me and Richard Dunn, we'd played in the first 2 games, that we weren't going to play in the last game. Our kind of tour was over. We'd done the necessary physical work, and the staff and players were having a meal, but the ones who were playing would have to go home early, and the ones who weren't could stay and have a few more. So as it is, boys being boys, we end up back in the hotel bar after we've been for the team meal elsewhere. We end up back in the hotel bar, but me and Dunny are drinking with the staff. The manager's gone to bed, Piercy, because he's a straight shooter, and all the team who were playing. But we're not even on the bench, me and Dunny. We're not taking a part in the game. So we're going to watch the game from the stands and then fly back with the team in 2 days later. So we ended up with our meal having a couple. He's gone, are you having a drink? I've gone, yeah. But obviously he's like 6. Dunny's known as the honey monster, and he can have a right scallop. So he's gone, are you having a drink? I've gone, I'll have a couple with you. But obviously there's only me and him drinking on the players' table. The staff are kicking on here. So I end up in a drinking reciprocal, end up reciprocally going at the same speed as whoever you're drinking with, don't you? So I'm drinking faster than I would because he's a good drinker. Anyway, fast forward a couple of hours, we're in a bar. Should have gone to bed at maybe 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. We're in a bar in the hotel, and it's now 3 o'clock in the morning. There's a few pissed up Everton fans in there because Everton are on the tour, but Everton are staying elsewhere, but some of their fans are in our hotel. And anyway, Robbie Fowler at the time is at City, and he's a good pal of mine. He'd been picking me up when I didn't have a car and I was a young kid, and he's Everton fan as a kid, but Liverpool legend. He wasn't on the tour, so he picked up an injury just before and never went on the tour. Anyway, I've got this Evertonian fucking bevied dickhead footy fan saying, Fowler didn't come because he's a shitbag and he knew because Everton fans have always had a weird relationship with him. Now, he's my pal. So I've had to listen to this fucking drunken prick go on. And I just know he's a prick from the way he's talking. And there's a part of me that just crosses over, just goes, nah, I'm not having this, because that's me mate, and I'm just not having somebody bad-mouth me mate in front of me. So I've ended up saying to him, hey, shut the fuck up, pretty much. Anyway, he's realised he needs to shut up. So, unbeknownst to me, I've carried on drinking with, remember the ex-England goalie, Tim Flowers. Tim's on our goalie coaches at the staff, carried on drinking. And Dunny's over there with some other members of staff. And then next minute, Dunny comes over to me and goes, you fucking best apologise, because Dunny used to play for Everton. So this fella's obviously gone over to Dunny and said he's been a bit of a cunt there, fucking give. But he doesn't know that I'm protecting me pal. So Dunny comes over and says, you best fucking apologise and all that. So I'm like, I'm not apologising, bring him over here. So Dunny and the fella come over here and the fella's going, no, you told me to shut the fuck up. I say, yeah, I did, yeah, because talking about my pal, you don't know what you're on about. Dunny says, apologise. So I said to Dunny, I'm not apologising to him. So as I'm arguing with Dunny and the fella, he's with his son. So there's a group of them in the bar. It wasn't on his own, there's a group of them. And his son's come over. I don't know, it's 2 o'clock in the morning in the bar in Thailand. Everyone's pissed up. And the son gets involved in the argument anyway. As I'm arguing with the fella and Dunny, the son boots me in the shin, like toe, just kicks me in the shin. So, and then like takes a step back thinking his dad and that are going to protect him because his voice is getting raised. So obviously I just slip around the side and I knew he was young. I didn't know how young he was and I've just slapped him, just open palm, slap him across the face because where I'm from, if when you're on that precipice of thinking you're a man, sometimes you need a fucking good slap to make you realise that you're not a man and that you're in a man's world. And again, when that comes to you, is usually when you overstep your boundaries. And who deserves to get it is, again, for the rest of fucking civilization. But this had overstepped these boundaries, booted me in the shin, and ends up getting open palm slapped. And his dad's standing right there. So at that point, Dunny grabs me round the collar and starts like wrestling with me. So he ends up pinning me against the wall because he's a big Dunny. So I'm like, what are you doing? He's got hold of me by the neck. And I'm kind of like drunk, but like, what the fuck's happening here? So he ends up pinning me up against the wall and going, you're out of order. So I'm like arguing with him. And as I'm arguing with him, I see the boy's dad coming behind him with his arm cocked. So I start going mad to get off Dunny. And Dunny thinks I'm trying to have it with him, so grabs me harder. But in the midst of pinning me, I can't move. Two other staff members have got me now, but I can see the lad's dad walking along the bar to clock me, and he just leans over and just goes, fuck off, just punches me in the head twice. So at that point, like, I've gone. So I've said to Dunny, you best let go of me now. So Dunny's realised what happened, but he's trying to keep hold of me. I said, you got 3 seconds to let go of me. Like, and gone, crossed over. And then I've ended up biting his hand, obviously let go of me. And then I was trying to get at the lad's dad. But obviously Dunny was in between that. So I ended up rugby tackling Dunny through a couple of glass tables and chairs. And then he stupidly crashes through a chair and gets stuck in the metal framework through the glass. The glass smashed and he gets stuck in it. But he's like a spider in the bath. And at that point, because he's bigger than me, I've gone back to the bar, picked up a pint glass. And as I'm coming back for him, I get it. Tim Flowers rugby tackles me. I'm going to do him, like, because I've just crossed over with him. Like, I'm so thankful now that I fucking never, because I get on with Dunny to this day, but that's that dangerousness of that fight or flight. Like, I'm like, this guy's going to kill me. He's held me up against me will. I've just got 2 cracks. There was about 13 of them Evertonians in the bar. This is on here. Like, I'm not going to take a chance, because I've seen people. When I was 14, my dad's mate, who we worked on the roofs with, 𝐬𝐿MT&x, went back to a party with a couple of girls. And anyway, this geezer comes in and ends up splattering them all over the inside of the apartment with a baseball bat. Not him and his mate. So the 2 of them were murdered. And I'd seen, as I say, I was just like, I was never taking chances. If I think my personal safe, because this is all you've got in the world is you. After you don't exist. You come on your own, you leave on your own. And I'd seen a lot of people lose their lives. I've seen a kid get stabbed through the heart when I was like 13 by a disabled fella on our estate, dead. Seen people get stabbed in the legs, seen people get run over by buses, people run over by trains at a young age. So, I knew how fragile life could be. And certainly when it came to fighting and boxing, I was brought up to, be able to defend the space I stood up in, mainly for self-preservation. Obviously, at that point, I've crossed. There's a dark part of me that crosses over and wants to really inflict damage on it, mainly just so it doesn't happen again. And when I think back to the Darbo stuff, I'm like, when I've read obviously witness statements, and I'm like, was the other 2 digs necessary? But at that moment, you don't go, oh yeah, 4's enough. At that moment, it's like, he might get up here. If he gets up, he's a hell of a lot bigger than me, which Dunny was, and obviously Darbo is. Luckily, Tim intercepts it, security come in, I get separated, pulled out, taken to the room. But I'm still trying to get out my room to go and have a fight with either the lad's dad or Dunny, and eventually calm down. Obviously, intoxicated as well. Dunny gets brought out a bit later, is obviously wanting to have a fight with me because he's been pushed on his back. And stupidly kicks in anger something that he thought was a movable object in the corridor, and it turns out to be stone and breaks his foot. Fucking broke his foot. So I don't know if he's the captain or vice captain. So the manager's got up the next day and he's like, Tasmanian Devil's been in the bar, smashed all the bar up, and what made it worse was all the Sky and media people were in the bar. They were staying in our hotel, so obviously you couldn't keep it in-house. So Pierce's retort to that was like, let's get him, put him in a Thai jail, and let's teach him a lesson. Obviously that never happened, but that's what he wants to do in his wisdom. I end up getting back to England, I land, sleep off the jet lag. I got to go flying to Munich, and they got flying to Munich, and then I had to get to Manchester, so the press couldn't pick up on me coming in. Fly, get home at, say, 2 a.m, sleep. Say I got home about 2 a.m, go to sleep about 5 o'clock, sleep right through that day. And my brother comes in my room, my younger brother Andrew, and says, wakes me up the next morning. So I'm literally off that plane, off the jet lag, and says, someone's been killed on the Johns. So I'm like, it's like, we'll know it. Like, whoever it is, you're going to know. It's so incestuous, you're going to know. So my brother was living on the Johns at the time, so I thought, he'll know. So I phoned him, like, once you're up, 7 o'clock or whatever, I phoned him, and his phone rang to an international ringtone. I was like, that's strange. Didn't answer, and then phoned me back. He phoned me back. And I said, where are you? He said, I'm in France fishing. So I was like, oh, thank God, because I was thinking, he might be dead here, it might be him. Because I knew he was knocking around with a few fucking rogues. But obviously, your own man at 16, 17, you know, you're forging your own way in the world. And then it slowly starts to hit home that, you know, there's been involved in there. But these are abroad now. They're out the country. You know, so I know this is coming. I'm like, so I've found out what's gone on. Obviously, I knew Anthony because I'd seen him. There's not many black families where we're from, and I seen him growing up, and he was a fucking lovely kid. It's such a fucking horrible thing what happened then. The lad who killed him was one of the best footballers I ever seen. Such a fucking waste of life. Like Anthony's life, obviously, for him and his family, but, you know, even Paul Taylor, who ended up killing him, like, such a fucking waste. Like, you know, he was a mad kid. He was always destined for madness, but also, you know, as I said to you before, there is goodness in people, like, and if it's not brought online by the right mentor at the right time, obviously people can lose the way. And I look at it going, that was avoidable. If there was a care network, if your mum and dad, you know, you can make it through. I do get that some stuff is, you know, serendipity, and it is just unavoidable, and bad stuff happens. But that was my biggest take out of it. Obviously, my brother was with them at the time. He'd gone along, being a bit younger than them, and obviously at that point it was joint enterprise, and they were lifed off.
What do you think the motive was for that murder?
I don't know, because I wasn't there. I don't think it was what it's been portrayed to be. I really, really don't. I think that could have been anyone at that bus stop that night.
Oh, was it unprovoked?
From what I gather, yeah, it was.
Wow.
He'd stopped. Anthony and his cousin and a girl had stopped at a bus stop. Now I think the girl was white and the two lads were either black. Anthony was black, and obviously I don't know whether the other lad was mixed race. I don't really know, his cousin. And where they've stood at the bus stop, they stood outside a pub, which is almost like, as you know, it's almost like we're wild animals, isn't it? State the territory, like it's, you know, very, very tribal places, pubs. They're outside the bus stop outside, and words are exchanged, whatever. My brother tells me that he was inside the pub. There's stuff being attributed to him that he says that wasn't me. That was just obviously the way the evidence was presented, and, you know, the way they sorted out in the courts. And I think it was the thing of kind of move or jog on or whatever, and it was a bit of back and forth. Because Anthony he was well known to the area. Anthony, I'd seen him around loads. You'd see him around all the time. He went to the schools, him and his sister Dominique, and you know, it wasn't like he was a stranger to the area. So it wasn't like it was the first time he'd been where he was either. And obviously, whatever had got said, they move on. And because of what had got said, there was an unhappiness with what had been said. So from what I gather, they were going to just fill him in and teach him a lesson, you know, give him a, you know, not that that's right, Liam, by the way, it's fucking stupid, idiotic fucking behaviour, but they were going to, because he didn't move away from the bus stop quick enough or something, teach him a fucking lesson of, you know, roughing him up. I don't think anyone who got in that car thought that the outcome was going to be the outcome. But this is what happens when you're out and around with dickheads. You know, a mate of mine, Peter Kay, says to me, Joe, if you keep going to barbers, eventually you get a haircut. If you keep hanging around with fucking dickheads who carry knives, eventually someone's going to get stabbed. You know, if you keep hanging around with the wrong crowd, you know, we all know it. So they've ended up going to the other side of the park, from what I gather, to kind of intercept them, to have a fight. And, you know, that fight has led to Paul jumping out from the side. And, you know, I've asked Michael, my brother, about it. I said, like, what happened? And he said, you know, he said, I was fighting with him, wrestling with him. And he said, I just felt this swoosh. He said, and then he just went soft in my arms. He said, I felt the wind. He said, there's no way in the world that he knew, Paul, where that was going. That could have gone anywhere. Now, the thing is, when you look at it, it's like an ice. Like, what did you think that was ever going to do? And in that fucking moment, he's ruined lots of people's lives. As I say, I had an uncle, Joe, was murdered when I was 6, and obviously grew up with an auntie who had to bring up 3 kids. A third kid was 8.5 months in the womb when her husband was murdered. And I grew up with that in the kind of family, so you knew what it was like for somebody to lose somebody. You know, albeit you can never put yourself in the position of a family or a mother who's lost a sibling. So I always said that should have been an eye for an eye. That's the way I see the world. So the person who took his life should never have a life, because you've taken that from somebody who'd done nothing wrong, in my opinion. Obviously, because of what happened with Stephen Lawrence and what had been missed, I think there was a media and a kind of political point scoring. But also, look, I think I've always kept my powder dry on it and tried to be as respectful as I can. I've got a huge admiration for G. Walker and the Walker family. And, you know, I've no problem ever sitting across the table from them if they ever wish to, and having a chat with them about anything I've ever said. In the aftermath of it, when I went on ITV News and appealed for Paul and Michael to come back from abroad to face justice, or when I've said what I've said, either on this podcast or, you know, James English podcast, which got a lot of feedback because of the way they clipped it up. And as I say, you know, I'm content in what I've said on it. And as I say, I'll look anybody in the eye and speak to anybody about it. And have a real understanding of kind of racism and everything that everybody else brings on through, and see what it can and does to people's lives. And also, we live in a country that, like, it just isn't racist. Like, it just isn't. You know, we do get obviously mad moments, but, you know, we've got to find a way of working together, like this divide and conquer motive that people have got, you know, whether it's our news outlets or our media outlets, is obviously not good for, you know, a healthy society where people can have aspirations. I think we've got to get back to good old-fashioned values of, you know, right and wrong. And as I say, I've done lots of things wrong, and I know lots of people who've done stuff that's you know, maybe not on the side of the law, but also, you know, there's a huge difference between kind of right and wrong. And as I say, for me, I'm comfortable with an eye for an eye. And I'm also, you know, I know that no matter, it's going to sound really fucking bad to say this, but I know my brother didn't kill Anthony Walker. Do you know what I mean? I know there was, you know, I've read all the evidence, I've seen everything that went on. I know that he was interviewed when he shouldn't have been without a solicitor, when he didn't have a learning age, that, you know, and it opens up wounds that you go, well, hang on a minute. But also, Anthony Walker's lying dead. His family never get to see him again. You know, Michael had to serve a long period of jail, and now, you know, was out and trying to get, you know, some semblance of a life. Paul, I think, is still in jail and may never get out, which, as I say, for me, I'm okay with. You know, he made a mad decision that night, and he took away, you know, somebody's life. And unfortunately, you know, if you do that, if that happened to my kids, you know, I wouldn't want that person walking around and having a life when, you know, they've stupidly taken the life of another. And as I say, I read the autopsy report. It was one blow, you know, that killed Anthony Walker. And not that it makes any consolation to the family, but I know it wasn't my brother who done that.
So since we arranged to sit down today, you've made the headlines twice. Two separate incidences. You've had court appearances. One is domestic between you and your wife, and the other one is is it online harassment or offensive tweets?
Which one?
Or
I've got a few
messages?
of them. I've got about 3 of them ongoing. We're trying to get them all into one case, but obviously the establishment, I think, or the Crown, are wanting to have 2 pops with me on the same jitty.
Okay.
So I've got to be careful what I talk about, because one's obviously still ongoing. We've got the summing up to do, and then obviously a magistrate decision, which is what it is. You know, I'd ideally want to be in the kind of Crown and under the jury of your peers, but when it comes to kind of libel and obviously certain thresholds of charges, you can only take them to a certain part of the court.
So the Jeremy Vine trial, there's other people being roped into that to make it a bigger thing than what it is.
No, but you obviously got I think it's well documented, but 𝐬𝐿𝐫𝐫𝐞𝐿's Lucy Ward and Jeremy Vine, and I think the Crown are trying to make it 𝐬𝐿𝐫𝐫𝐞, and I've got to be careful what I talk about here, because I don't want them to arrest me. They've already arrested me on this bail thing for mentioning 𝐬𝐿𝐫𝐫𝐞𝐿. When I got arrested in front of me kids, 4 coppers, 3 of them butch lesbians, banged me door, and I was babysitting. My missus had gone out for some food, and I had 3 of me 4 kids. Luckily, me eldest, me 12-year-old, was out, because he'd probably give them a piece of his mind, which might have been fantastic. But I'm babysitting him. I've just been playing footy with my mate in the back with his kids. They were around, and he's gone, right, I'm off, just going dark on a kind of summer evening, about 7. Anyway, bang on the door. So you just know that copper knock, don't you? I was like, it's the police, that. I've just fed the kids, so that you can imagine I'm not the most well-versed in single-parent childcare. Like, my missus is a saint and does, 80% of the work when it comes to the kids. But obviously I'm in daddy daycare duties, and I've got the tea done. I'm like really proud of myself. Of all the kids are still alive at like 7 o'clock, and they're just getting fed, and I can, I'm just thinking about watching, I think the Euros was on, or there was a sport game on, or the Olympics it might have been, and I thought, yeah, it was the Olympics, and I thought, it's wine o'clock, I've got the day done. I'll have a glass of wine as they're having a tea, I'm fed, and I'll put them in the PJs, read them a story, and then, you can watch the goal for the rest of the Olympics. And I get the knock on the door. Anyway, 3 big butch lesbian women, all in the like mid-20s, 20 and above. I'm like, you're here to arrest me, aren't you? I didn't know what I'd done. And she was like, yeah. I said, well, look, just before you do, I've got 3 kids in there. My youngest, like 18 months. They're eating the dinner. I've got an 18-month-old, a 6-month-old, and a 9-year-old there. So I'm on my own in the house. My missus is out having food with her mates. Like, can we do this tomorrow? What's this about? No. So she said, can I come in? So I'm like, yeah, come into the house, the 3 women. They just straight away, they got no social skills, have they? So they just start acting all weird. Bear in mind, the kids don't know they're in at the minute. So they come into the living room so the kids can't see them, and I'm talking with them. And I'm chatting in the front, but I can see where the kids are through, like there's like a window in the living room. You can just about see them. They can't see him, but I can see the kids. So next minute, I see a copper in all the high-vis man running around the back window. So obviously my kids have started screaming, crying. They haven't seen the 3 coppers in the living room because there's a copper basically running in our back garden. So I'm like, what the fuck's it? So I've ended up stopping speaking to them. And now I'm like, the kids are screaming. I'm like, what the fuck's he doing? She went, oh, he's just going around the back to see it so that he didn't run over, do the backs. I'm like, what am I going to run away? Like, what the fuck are you on about? Like, what do you mean I'm going to run away? I was like, do you realise how ridiculous this is? I was like, what are you here for? So they explained to me, I'd tweeted about 𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐫𝐫𝐞, what is his name? The fucking geezer who won the women's gold medal boxing. Is that his name? 𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐫𝐫𝐞 or something. I'd had the issue with putting Jeremy Vine, had said I had a brain injury on his show, so I'd had the issue with, it was because I didn't go on his show. He emailed me to go on, I didn't, I went on Piers, so we just started fucking saying, is this a brain injury and all that. Now, I've got a history of Huntington's in our family where my dad's the only one out of 4 boys who doesn't have it. It's a genetic, that's passed on, which basically looks like Parkinson's, and I had an uncle die last year, 52 from it, and his son's got it. So it's obviously well known in our family, but my dad got tested and I don't have it. But at the time, my dad was still in the midst of getting tested. So I've got this Vine on the telly telling everyone I've got a brain injury. I've got a 12-year-old in school coming back saying, Dad, have you got what my Uncle Paul died of? And I'm going, this fucking dickhead. All because I didn't go on his show to give my 50 pence worth on whether women are experts or not in the men's game. Then on the back of it, I get it with these libels. I get doorstep with it, so he's libeling me. And then I've got a criminal for the same tweet of like, I think I called him a big bite or something like that. And he said I meant he was a pedo, which I didn't. I was just saying you're fucking getting people tickets and points on the licence and acting like a bear on your bike in London and throwing yourself in front of fucking white vans. And he went through the court system, and anyway, I ended up having to settle with him because it would have cost me, I spoke to Tom on that, it would have cost me £2.5 million or £1 million to get it to the High Court to then get in the definition. And as it was, I was like, I can just get rid of this for a couple $100,000. So I was just trying to pacify and get it done with. In the midst of that, he started the criminal proceeding against me for the same thing. So it's fucking insane. Like, it's genuinely insane what they're doing.
But we can't really say much about what's going on up to this point.
Well, for the tweet, so then what happens is, as I say to you, like, they arrest me, I go in the cells overnight, they keep me in Runcorn Holding Station overnight, and then I have to go in front of the judge because I wasn't allowed to mention any of the names in a tweet. Because what I'd said is, you have all you women out there who've all attacked me, for saying what I've said about the women being in the men's game and on the men's commentary. I think I was calling it lesbo ball at one point just to fucking really piss him off, And all the women who were attacking me, I was like, why are you silent when there's two fellas here boxing in the Women's Olympics, punching women's heads in, and you're going, oh, how brave, so brave. Or you're just saying nothing. If you give it the same level of energy that you give me saying women shouldn't be on the men's punditry, then you probably wouldn't have women getting their heads punched in for gold medals by fellas, which is what we're seeing. That tweet led them to arrest me in front of me kids. And I was saying, and they sent 3, I believe, lesbians, and I was saying to them, you ain't got kids, have you? I was like, because if you had kids, you wouldn't do what you're doing here. If you knew, and they were like, we're just following the rules. I went, that didn't wash in Nuremberg, don't you? You know that. We're just following the rules. When the day of reckoning comes, that's not going to wash. You can't just say you're following rules. Like, policing for me is using common sense. Anyway, I go in the cells that night. I ended up, my uncle and my cousin live around the corner from me, so luckily I couldn't get hold of my missus. She was, whatever they were eating was signal shite. So by the time I got to her, I already had the wheels in motion for my uncle to come round and relieve me. So I had to explain to my kids. I said, my daughter's 9 and obviously visually upset, and I had to explain to them, this is what happens if you say stuff that the people who pay these people's wages don't like. This is what they do to you. In this country, it felt like North Korea, in many regards, where I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe I've said to a few big voices in the women's game and just mentioned somebody's name in a tweet. Nothing about it. Just saying, why, if you show the energy, 15 women who are high profile attacking me, if you show the same energy, maybe we won't have fellas boxing in the Women's Olympics. Anyway, arrested, holding cell. And I kind of needed it. I needed to go back into jail to see what it's like, that solitude, to go, okay, this is not where I want to be. This is not what I want to do. And also, if I'm honest, Liam, you hear the madness that the police have to deal with on a fucking day-by-day basis. And in the end, the police officers who arrested me, just through spending time and talking to me, realised it's called mirroring, isn't it? So it's well known in psychology, but you see it happen to them. If you're up to no good and they rightly do what they need to do, but when they actually know, they're like, fucking hell, this is wrong what we're doing. And you don't have to say anything. You just converse with them, talk to them, and that mirroring effect of they're like, what the fucking hell? I was like, is this what you signed up for?
When the trial's done and dusted and complete with Jeremy Vine, it'd be nice to get you back on so we can discuss that in more length.
It'd be interesting because obviously the wheels of history keep turning. It'd be interesting to see obviously what comes out, because obviously the way they've played the hand, they're going to have to give us disclosure. I think that they didn't think they were going to have to give us. So, as always, I don't like to do it, but also if you go to a knife fight, make sure you bring a fucking bazooka. And that's all you can do really. And you've got to trust in the English court system and the English legal system, albeit, I've got lots of comments about previous trials I've been through and what I've seen happen. But obviously, because I'm under court stipulations at the minute, the last thing I want to do is antagonise the judicial system
and
more.
I don't want to jeopardise any trial.
And again, the thing that happened with my missus, don't forget, that was kicked out of court, stayed by a judge.
What is the...
That's like 3.5 years ago. And also, in spite of evidence of people saying, no, look, it was a 999 call. I've got to be careful talking about it. It was a 999 call. That's not actually what happened. Everyone was drunk. People were emotional. That's not what happened. This is what happened. But then never took never took statements or never even investigated it. Just went, we got him here. He's going to plead on this 999 call. I was like, no, that's not what happened. And also, it was thrown out. And I found that the director of public prosecutions dug it and went, no. And I think it was to do with what I've said and what I've said recently, because they've spent an awful lot of money, whether it was the Daniel Stendhal incident up in Barnsley, where South Yorkshire Police, really showed the full arsenal of tools to try and convict me, and I was found not guilty by a jury in, I think, less than an hour.
And can I ask a question? The million, I mean, everyone's going to want to know.
Go on, mate.
Did you kick your missus in the head?
No. Well, if I kick my missus in the head, like you've stood into me today, and I've played football. If I kick my missus in the head, she's not going to be in a good way. Is she really after it? Let's be honest. If any of us, that's not just me, by the way, but obviously even me, got to think my leg strength is going to be slightly more than the average person, all right? And that's the thing is, once you are in the category of enemy to some of our publications, then that's where you live, and obviously once you've caught them hacking your phone and taken substantial damages from them and got letters of apology from them, which I have, they have long memories, yet they mightn't be in the news of the world now, but the amalgam, chameleons and the reptiles, they shapeshift into another thing and into another guise under another publication. But like the police, they have long memories. And as I say, I take my hat off to the job that the police have to do. I think lots of them could do it better. I think we've got a problem in our police force and a true meritocracy in terms of we're having absolute fucking lemons be police who can't fucking fight, who don't know what it's like. You've got nerds and traffic wardens now as community and police officers. I think we need a healthy police force, because who else is going to take care of the chaos out there? And as I say, when I was in them holding cells, some of the fucking screams and the noise, slept the night in there. What people have to deal with, genuinely people who, because of austerity and social services and, the degradation of people's support networks, we've now got fucking lunatics walking around who possibly in yesteryear may well have been sectioned or certainly away from the populace. We've got these people, as we're seeing from 𝐼𝐸𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿 or whatever the fuck his name is, we've got these people, lying around waiting just to fucking explode. And, when I look at it, as I say, I feel sorry for the police, because you can see, there's a few of them who are jobs worse, but you can see most of them, they probably got involved in policing to see justice, to see stuff, the wheels of justice turn. But then once the King's brothers and they paid them off and justice doesn't apply to a certain bracket of people, I think we start to see society kind of push back against that. Everyone's got to be whiter than white, and that's just not a true reflection of people. Like, the best people usually are fucked up. The best drug and alcohol counsellors are usually reformed drug and alcoholics. Weirdly, the best lifestyle counsellors are who've never made a mistake or never ran a fucking business, but they'll tell everyone what the fuck to do. No, I want the people who fucking got it wrong, fucking learned the lessons, took the scabs, built on that, and moved the life forward. They're the people I want to listen to.
Do you know what? I would love nothing more than to spend another 3 or 4 hours talking to you, but I know that you've got an appointment to go to now, so I've got my eye on the clock.
Right.
There's so much more I want to discuss and ask and pick your brains, but I know you've got to be somewhere, and I don't want you to look back with any regrets and think, fucking hell, I should have left earlier.
I'll come back on, mate. Don't worry.
This has been great. There's lots more I'd love to ask you, which I think this is nice. It's been a couple of hours, and we can always have a part 2 if you're up for that. We can commit to that now.
Yeah, no problem at all. I've enjoyed it. Is that 2 hours, is it?
Yeah, mate, I'm sorry that
I'm
sorry we cut that short,
problem.
but you got to be somewhere.
No problem.
Get off, brother.
Cheers, mate.